Dear colleague, as you know, the general decision on item 7, decision 37.7 is to be adopted. I have been informed that the consultation that were in process on this have been corrected. I would like, therefore, to propose that we adopt this decision by consensus and without debate. Please, rapporteur, present the text.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Merci, Monsieur le Président. On a le texte dans les deux langues, présenté tel que proposé par le groupe de travail. Et je voudrais justement vous informer, en fait, informer les délégations que on va rajouter tous les documents de référence qui contiennent l'état de conservation. Donc ici, on n'a mis que cette BAD, mais on va le faire, donc ne vous inquiétez pas. Voilà le texte, vous pouvez le voir. Vous voulez que je le lise? Je vais vous présenter le... On va faire doucement pour que vous puissiez regarder le texte. Donc, paragraphe 1, c'est clair. Paragraphe 2. Paragraphe 3. S'il vous plaît, si vous paraît trop vite, vous me signalez, vous me faites un signe, on va faire encore plus doucement. Paragraphe 4.
After the presentation of the text, I will give the floor to Excellency Ambassador of Germany.
Thank you. Yes, indeed, we have agreed on the revised draft of decision. The changes are here in paragraph 3. This has been worded as you see now. We appreciate the decision of the Security Council to ensure that for the first time, as you can read, this very historical decision of the Security Council to include the protection of cultural and historical sites in the mandate of the UN mission in Mali. And then we have also a new paragraph 4, launches an appeal to UNESCO and to the parties to the Hague Convention for the Protection of Cultural Property in the event of armed conflict, seeks their support for Mali and their cultural and technical cooperation, in particular for the establishing property inventories, and also request the implementation of conservation measures for cultural properties threatened by armed conflicts in other countries. This is a new paragraph. Number 5 has been redrafted to make clear that not the elephants in India are concerned. Well, it's redrafted as you can read it, putting pressure on African elephants and rhinoceros linked to a growing illicit trade to Asia. And all in all, the draft decision has been restructured, I mean, with these Roman numbers, which refer to the document, to the relevant document, and the information given in the document. So this is a little bit clearer and shorter than before. Thank you.
We move to the adoption of the text. So we adopt the text. Now we came to another item, Sela Batebi National Park de Soto, extension of Ukahalamba Dragon's Bay Park, South Africa. The draft decision number 37, Com 8B.18. I now invite IUCN and ICOMOS to present the nomination of Sela Batebi National Park, Lesotho, an extension of Ukalamba Dragon's Bay Park, South Africa. IUCN and ICOMOS, you have the floor, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson, and good morning. ICOMOS will start the presentation and then be followed by our colleagues from IUCN. The Sehla Bateba National Park is proposed as an extension to the mixed property Ukaklamba Drakensberg in South Africa and is the first file presented by Lesotho. It features a distinctive mountain landscape and is said to contain at least 65 sun rock art sites found in various settings. Can you follow the slides, please? Sehla Batsebe, shown in red in this slide, is located in the Maloti Drakensberg mountain range that borders the existing World Heritage property. The proposed extension covers 6,500 hectares and shares a 12 kilometers border with the existing property. It has a buffer zone to the north and west, but no buffer zone to the south, where it meets the South African border. The rock formations with drawings have often been used as shelters in the past. Studies suggest that the location of the rock art sites were selected in relation to centers of livelihood or ritual. Most rock arts show a combination of humans and animals and are painted in earthen yellows, browns, and dark red pigments. The rock art was recorded during a survey in the 1980s conducted by the National University of Lesotho, and the results of this project are still the key reference for rock art in Lesotho today. Yet, more knowledge is needed on the rock art, including its locations, motives, and significance, as well as its state of conservation. Most sites have not been revisited since the survey in 1980, which also provided most images in the dossier. In most cases, the location of the rock art sites remains unknown. Only few basic maps shown in this slide exist, and ICOMOS has little information except name and reference number for 40 out of the 65 rock art sites. ICOMOS notes that based on recent research, scholars recognize cultural significance beyond the paintings to include elements of the landscape like the meandering Solikane River seen here, or the Solikane Falls, which were likely perceived as portals to a supernatural realm. However, the significance of landscape features is not referred to in the nomination dossier. In terms of management, could we go one slide back, please? We've jumped a slide ahead, thank you. In terms of management, the park has been divided into 4 zones with different protection status: wilderness, natural environment, recreation, and service areas. Interpretation of rock art in the park is scarce and not very well founded where it exists, like in the new environmental center and reception facilities seen here. The information provided is broadly culture historical, with a small diorama of the Sun people located outside the center, which seems to create an untenable dichotomy between the Sun and the Bas Soto. The Interpretation Center and new visitor accommodation are further developments in the services and recreation zone. In summary, ICOMOS acknowledges that authenticity is likely met, but cannot confirm criteria or integrity at this moment. Key challenge of this extension request is the general lack of information. ICOMOS has no visual information on the majority of rock art sites, and based on the information provided, cannot judge the significance of cultural features in this extension. ICOMOS also has reason to believe that rock art sites of equal or even higher quality are located in the buffer zone. With regard to conservation, protection, and management, ICOMOS notes that the rock art sites are not registered as monuments. The joint team of the Transfrontier Park guides the management of both parts, but does not give equal attention to the cultural elements and focuses on the natural elements. ICOMOS recommends that the property be deferred on the basis of cultural criteria in order to allow the state party to conduct an update of the 1980s survey, to gain basic information needed on the rock art sites, and to consider the potential contribution of other landscape features. ICOMOS recommends inviting the state party to submit an international assistance request for this task, to continue its cautious approach to conservation, and to improve the overall presentation of the Sun rock art. Finally, ICOMOS also recommends that the two state parties of Lesotho and South Africa continue their close and effective cooperation, but to cover more prominently also the cultural heritage aspects, and ideally provide a buffer zone to the source of Sahlabatebe. Thank you very much for your attention, and with your permission, Mr. Chair, I'm now handing over to my colleague from IUCN. Thank you.
So good morning, and if we could move to the slides for IUCN's evaluation and the evaluation of this property by IUCN in relation to natural values is on page 125 of the English and 127 of the French version of the IUCN evaluation report. Could we just move to the IUCN slides, please? Okay, thank you. So next slide, and ICOMOS has already introduced the map, so just to note that IUCN would mark the size of the extension as an important factor in the committee's considerations at 6,500 hectares, which if added to the existing Ukalamba Drakensberg World Heritage Area would result in a total property of just under 250,000 hectares as a transnational World Heritage Site. Next slide, please. In relation to natural criteria, IUCN concludes that the Sahlabatebe National Park makes a compelling case for addition to the existing property under the natural criteria in relation to its natural values, which are recognized in the current property under natural criteria 7 and 10. Sahlabatebe National Park's natural values are notable despite its relatively small size, and make a valuable addition to the much larger existing World Heritage property. Whilst clearly the area proposed for extension would not on its own meet the relevant World Heritage criteria, it adds significantly to the integrity of this existing property through the addition of important natural attributes and features that are complementary to those that are already recognized in the Ukalamba Drakensberg Park. Next slide, please. More specifically, under criterion 7, the property has areas of great beauty with soaring basaltic buttresses, incisive dramatic cutbacks, and golden sandstone ramparts. There are rolling high-altitude grasslands, wetlands, alpine tarns, and the pristine steep-sided river valleys and rocky gorges also contribute to the beauty of this site. And adding to that natural beauty is a mosaic of colourful flowers in the spring and the summer. And these distinctive and rather fragile mountain grasslands scenically complement those of the Ukalamba Drakensberg Park World Heritage Site. Under criterion 10, the nominated extension would add to the existing property in an elevated western flowing watershed, which is host to flora and fauna, of notable scientific importance, including species that are classified as rare and endemic to this park. The site provides critical nesting habitat for the globally endangered Cape vulture and the bearded vulture, and the proposed extension will add value to the conservation of species, and including providing protection for the Maloti minnow, which is a species considered extinct in the existing property. Selabatebe National Park hosts more than 20% of the plant species of the whole Maloti Drakensberg area, and more than 10% of this area's plant species are endemic. And it contains wetland and African alpine tundra ecosystems that also significantly add to the value of the existing property. Selabatebe National Park was established as a wildlife sanctuary and a national park in 1970, and legally established as a national park in 2001. There is a sound national legal framework aimed at guaranteeing long-term protection, and at international level, the bilateral Memorandum of Understanding between Lesotho and South Africa provides a clear commitment for joint management of this proposed extension with the existing property, as well as the adjoining buffer zones. Next slide, please. The boundaries of the property are clearly defined in relation to their natural values, and they're well understood, and the buffer zone in relation to natural values is appropriately drawn, although we note it's not yet been formally gazetted. Whilst there is a park manager in Selabatebe, there are relatively few technical and support staff on site. The joint management plan and business plans are in place and developed until 2012, but their implementation has clearly been affected by some lack of staffing and inadequate financial resources. There appears to be a strong local involvement and supportive local leadership, which has been reinforced by the creation of a community conservation forum, and a new law, which is the Nature Conservation Act 2005, is pending approval and expected to provide additional guidance for staffing and resource allocation. So as far as the natural criteria are concerned, with a hesitation but ultimately a conclusion that protection and management is adequate from IUCN, IUCN considers that this extension would be appropriate under the natural criteria, and it would meet and contribute to integrity and protection and management requirements, but noting the need to strengthen the management further. And so IUCN, whilst fully respecting ICOMOS's evaluation of the cultural aspects and attributes of this nomination file, which are the basis of the draft decision that has been recommended to the committee in Working Document 8B, made a conclusion that in relation to the natural criteria, that the committee could consider approval of the extension, and we felt that that case has been demonstrated. In relation to the decision before you, then that is in Working Document 8B, and it is at page 18 of the English and page 19 of the French version. Thank you, Chair. That concludes the presentations of ICOMOS and of IUCN. Thank you.
Now I open for discussion, please. Ramali, please.
Bonjour tout le monde. Merci, Monsieur le Président. Monsieur le Président, nous sommes en face d'un paysage culturel extrêmement intéressant et vivant. Il s'agit essentiellement, comme l'ont dit l'ICOMOS et l'IUCN, d'une prolongation, il s'agit d'une extension d'un bien qui était déjà connu, à savoir le Drakensberg en Afrique du Sud. Et suite, si vous voulez, à l'exposé des organes consultatifs, on peut rappeler que ce bien qui comporte 65 sites d'art rupestre et qui date du 2e millénaire avant notre ère sont le témoignage du mode de vie et des croyances du peuple sang. Mais on est aussi en face, si vous voulez, Monsieur le Président, d'un bien qui existe et qui fonctionne dans les conditions remarquables et acceptables d'un bien du patrimoine mondial. Parce qu'au vu des exposés, qu'est-ce qui se passe? Il y a la vue de ce bien qui a été prouvé. L'UNCN a insisté dessus. Il y a les critères 7 et 10 qui ont été reconnus. Il y a également les critères 1 et 3 qui ont été reconnus par l'ICOMOS. Et l'UNCN a mis l'accent sur l'importance de l'existence des limites. Les limites sont définies aussi bien que la zone tampon. Cela veut dire que notre bien il est entièrement protégé. En termes toujours de protection du bien, selon l'exposé que nous avons suivi, Monsieur le Président, il existe un cadre juridique et institutionnel approprié parce qu'il y a la loi foncière de 1979 du ministère du Tourisme et de l'Environnement et de la Culture. Il y a la déclaration du bien sanctuaire national de faune et de protégé depuis 1951. Il y a également la loi sur les parcs nationaux de 1975 et en 1967, il y a eu la loi relative à la protection des monuments historiques. Donc aussi bien la partie naturelle que la partie, si vous voulez, culturelle sont protégées. Et au sein de ce bien, nous avons un système de gestion adéquat. On nous a parlé de l'existence d'un plan de gestion, même si ce plan de gestion arrive à terme en 2012. En tout cas, c'est un outil pratique de gestion qui est là et qu'on pourra actualiser. Et le bien a été divisé en 4 zones qui sont suivies. Il existe également sur le terrain une structure de gestion qui est partagée par les 2 États partis, à savoir l'Afrique du Sud et le Lesotho. Il s'agit du comité de gestion conjoint qui existe. Et donc il y a une plateforme, il y a une collaboration entre les 2 États partis qui veillent sur les 2 sites. Et en termes également d'études comparatives, il y a eu une étude comparative bien élaborée qui s'est inspirée des biens de la sous-région inscrits au patrimoine mondial. En conséquence, Monsieur le Président, nous trouvons que ce bien fonctionne déjà dans les normes appréciables d'un bien du patrimoine mondial. Et à l'image des organes consultatifs, nous sommes d'accord qu'il y a des mesures d'accompagnement à apporter. Nous sommes d'accord qu'avec l'ICOMOS, qu'il y a des précisions à apporter par rapport à certains biens. Et en la matière, il existe déjà un inventaire des années 80, ça a été dit. Il s'agit maintenant d'accompagner cet inventaire. Il s'agit surtout de profiter et de capitaliser l'expérience de la partie sud-africaine qui a eu à agir sur ces sites similaires pendant 10 ans. Donc mettre à la disposition de la partie du Lesotho les compétences nécessaires pour pouvoir actualiser cet inventaire qui existe déjà. Parmi les mesures d'accompagnement, nous suggérons également qu'il y ait une meilleure identification des biens culturels. Et nous souhaiterions également que la zone tampon couvre l'ensemble du périmètre proposé pour classement. Et pour terminer, Monsieur le Président, je souhaiterais également entendre soit l'État parti, s'il est là, ou alors la partie sud-africaine qui est également concernée par ce bien transfrontalier. Je vous remercie.
Call on Germany, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to everyone. Germany congratulates Lesotho for bringing this important extension forward, and as we are examining here a proposed extension of an existing property, I recall operational guidelines para 136, which reads, extensions to an existing World Heritage property located on one state party may be proposed to become transboundary properties, and that's what we are looking at. The operational guidelines do not require an extension to an existing property to demonstrate OUV on its own, but should add to existing values, as IUCN has pointed out. The proposed extension is essentially enhancing OUV of the existing property by enlarging it on the territory of a neighboring country. In view of conservation, this is a very wise step, as cultural and natural values often do not stop at boundaries. With regard to cultural aspects, my cultural colleague will continue.
Having carefully examined both the evaluations by ICOMOS and IUCN and looking at the draft decision, we are of the opinion that the extension nomination fulfills the requirements and does not need to prove an own OUV for cultural criteria on its own. The question of integrity and management, respectively protection, has also to be seen in the context of joint transboundary property. We note the recommendations which have been brought forward by ICOMOS, but we consider that these can be dealt with in the next step. We believe that the natural regulation covers, not at all, but in a certain way, the needs for the protection of the cultural values. We expect that the Lesotho will be assisted in this regard by South Africa. From a nature conservation point of view, this extension is as important as for the conservation of the cultural components. We therefore believe that the extension can be approved and the Lesotho part be inscribed today.
Si, I give the floor to, je donne la parole à Sénégal.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Après avoir écouté le Mali et l'Allemagne, nous pouvions presque renoncer à la parole, mais nous allons peut-être insister sur deux points qui se trouvent in fine dans l'argumentaire donné par nos collègues précédents. Premièrement, dans ce genre de situation, nous pensons qu'il faut parfois s'habituer à ignorer la frontière. Ignorer la frontière parce que les formations géologiques et l'écosystème transcendent ces frontières. Et les aigles nidificateurs ils ne vont pas demander un visa pour aller du Lesotho à l'Afrique du Sud. Donc il y a un continuum géologique, il y a un continuum du point de vue de la biodiversité, et il y a un continuum aussi bien au niveau des écofacts qu'au niveau des artefacts. De ce point de vue-là, nous pensons que les valeurs universelles exceptionnelles, déjà bien établies en Afrique du Sud, trouvent leur prolongement naturel au Lesotho. De ce point de vue-là, nous partageons l'avis dégagé par le Mali, fortifié par l'Allemagne, et demandons l'extension sans tarder de la totalité des critères au Lesotho. Merci.
Je donne la parole à la Suisse.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. La Suisse apprécie également l'intention de créer une extension de ce site, notamment sur une base transfrontalière. Il reste toutefois une question ouverte parce que la principale difficulté en ce qui concerne les critères culturels, c'est l'absence fondamentale d'informations relatives à ces éléments qui sont contenus dans le bien. En d'autres mots, nous ne savons pas exactement où ils se trouvent. Les inventaires sont incomplets ou datent d'il y a longtemps. Et le Mali l'a dit aussi, il y a besoin d'une meilleure identification des biens culturels. Ceci est important non seulement parce que c'est un élément essentiel pour approuver l'extension, mais ce sera aussi très important pour la gestion du bien dans l'avenir. Et c'est pour ça que nous pensons que l'État partie ou les États partis nécessitent un petit peu plus de temps pour améliorer ces connaissances qui vont faciliter la gestion, et nous appuyons donc qu'on renvoie cette décision à l'année prochaine. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Oui, India, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We're looking at the extension of a site to a country which does not have at present a site. We are looking at obviously a transboundary nomination. We're looking at a site where IUCN has welcomed the extension because it obviously adds both value and area. In fact, it provides for some very critical habitat to come in. The problem, as I understand it, if there is a problem, but I mean, it's not that I approve of the fact of a problem, is on the cultural side. And the cultural side seems to be saying that, well, we don't actually know, we don't really know the extent of the rock art, and it needs to be studied, it needs to be looked at. I think you'd be able to study it much better if the area was brought under protection and conservation. Secondly, the ICOMOS thematic studies on rock art should have covered this. And if it hasn't covered it, then it's a gap that I think ICOMOS should look at its own work and try and cover it. The point about international assistance, there's a rather sad document that we will look at in the next few days, which is the state of money available for international assistance. I don't, you know, I feel bad about it, I feel sad about it, but I don't think you should hold up a nomination or a site to look for money from a source that has no money. But the not bringing this site on would deprive the world of a much needed extension, a much needed addition to the natural characteristics and attributes. I would urge, respected Chair, that we do this today and now. We approve this, and that's what I have to say. Thank you, Chair.
I now call on the state party, Lesotho.
Mr. Chairman, Lesotho is already dealing with the rock art conservation issues that are raised in the IUCN ICOMOS report, and urges the committee to recognize the existing cross-border collaboration between the two states parties through. Oh. Can you hear me now? Lesotho is already dealing with the rock art conservation issues that have been raised in the IUCN ICOMOS report and also from the floor, and urges the committee to recognize the existing cross-border collaboration between the two state parties, which is Lesotho and South Africa, through the TFCA project. We have established an information center where rock art and other cultural materials of the Sehlabatebe area will be presented and interpreted, although there is need to do thorough research on the rock art as an ongoing process. We are currently working on the proposal to be submitted for funding to undertake a more comprehensive research. But in the meantime, we request that this proposal be adopted. Thank you.
I call on South Africa, please.
Thank you, Chair. I would first like to start off by correcting an error I made yesterday when I acknowledged incorrectly ICUN instead of ICOMOS in the good work that was done in the hill forts of Rajasthan. And I'd like to go on and now correctly thank ICUN for the immense support it has given to the State Party of Lesotho in preparing for this nomination. And Mr. Chair, in considering the nomination of the Sehlabatebe National Park, South Africa would like to advise the committee to pay special attention to the continuous landscape which form the Ukahlamba Drakensberg Park, which is in South Africa, and the Sehlabatebe National Park, which is in Lesotho. It is important for this committee to remember that the cultural criteria of the property under consideration is based on attributes of a period that started before the drawing of the colonial borders. South Africa therefore submits that just as Sehlabatebe National Park's natural criteria, OUV, has been justified in its semblance of Ukahlamba, the cultural attributes, that is rock art, of Sehlabatebe are of a similar to those of Ukahlamba. This is owing to the fact that Sehlabatebe and Ukahlamba have evolved as one landscape broken only recently through colonial borders. The rock art depictions of Sehlabatebe completes the evolutionary picture of Maluti Drakensberg rock art, as they contain most of the recent paintings by the Sun Hunters gatherers, including scenes showing the arrival of the colonizers. Having said that, it remains critical that this committee recognizes the connectedness of Sehlabatebe with Ukahlamba, and that the natural and cultural attributes of these two properties are linked through an identical natural and historical process. Sehlabatebe and Ukahlamba are located in one mountain range that is known by the name of Maluti by the people of Lesotho and known as Ukahlamba or Drakensberg by the people of South Africa. It is one mountainous landscape that was occupied by the San people, who left an exceptional record of their lives in the form of rock art that we find exceptionally preserved in both Sehlabatebe and uKhahlamba. South Africa is therefore of the view that the Sihlabathebe nomination is more about bringing completeness of what was once one landscape and now broken through an artificial boundary. South Africa is emphasizing this point in order to demonstrate to this committee that ICOMOS doubt of the property's OUV is grounded on the view of the property as not being part of the already inscribed uKhahlamba Drakensberg Park. We submit to this committee that if the colonial borders between Lesotho and South Africa did not exist at the time of the nomination of uKhahlamba Drakensberg Park, the property under consideration today would have been part of the uKhahlamba nomination in the first place. Mr. Chair, I would like to continue just a little bit for 1 minute. We have been closely cooperating with the Kingdom of Lesotho through the process of Maluti Drakensberg Transfrontier Park in order to ensure that the conservation areas in both territories are managed to its highest standard. A cultural heritage working group has recently been constituted for the Transfrontier Park, and this group serves as an advisory forum for the authorities in both state parties, that is Lesotho and South Africa. This working group has also prioritized cultural heritage research for 5 years, and this research will be carried out as a 5-year integrated development plan for the Transfrontier Park. The concerns that raised by ICOMOS regarding the rock art research will therefore be adequately addressed through the Maluti Drakensberg Transfrontier Park Research Program. South Africa also agrees with ICOMOS that authenticity is clearly demonstrated in the rock art of Sihlabathebe. On the issue of integrity, ICUN is satisfied that the property has demonstrated integrity. We have no doubt that the area of Sihlabathebe has been nominated for this extension contain enough attributes and representative sample of the rock art that it meets the condition of integrity. South Africa therefore requests the committee to approve the extension of uKhahlamba Drakensberg to include Sihlabathebe National Park. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I call on Ethiopia, please. Ethiopia.
Oh, that one, yeah, no.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. After listening to the explanations by the state party on the rock art being continuously researched, hence will contribute more to understanding of the process, that will be also of benchmarking to other African states. Ethiopia would support the extension of this property. Thank you.
La parole à la Russie, please.
Уважаемые коллеги, выслушав как бы все за и против и понимая позицию ИКОМОСа, который руководствуется своими очень строгими критериями, в то же время, понимая, что существует план развития и консервации именно вот этой культурной части, и то, что этот парк представляет естественную часть Южноафриканского парка, мы тоже хотели бы поддержать вопрос включения в список национального парка Лесото. Спасибо.
I give the floor to IUCN, please.
Thanks, Chair. I didn't note any particular comments in the direction of IUCN. I think the clear question for the committee is to deliberate a situation where natural values are satisfied by the extension, and we have no doubts in the recommendation that we are making in that regard, with some of the questions that are posed by ICOMOS. And forgive me if I did miss a question, but I didn't detect anything that was directed to IUCN that requires a particular response. Clearly, if the committee has amendments to the decision, then we can try to, with ICOMOS, help the committee through any questions that arise in that regard. And if I missed a question, please, I hope you'll clarify what I missed. Apologies. Thank you.
ICOMOS, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson. ICOMOS just like to take the opportunity to reiterate that even its thematic study on rock art saw a general potential for significant rock art sites in the area of Sehla Batebe. However, we also have indication that equally significant or even more significant sites may be currently located in the buffer zone of the property and not within the property boundaries themselves. And it is the uncertainty of the exact location of the cultural elements and cultural evidence that puts us into this uncomfortable situation of not being able to judge whether the key sites are covered by the current property boundaries. However, ICOMOS is fully committed to work and cooperate with the state party in identifying the cultural components in this site, and we hope that the committee may wish to include some wording in the draft decision that ensures that ICOMOS and the state party can embark on such cooperation in identifying the cultural components which may contribute to the OUV of the existing property. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson.
Donne la parole à la France.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. La France soutient l'avis proposé par les organes consultatifs, ce qui nous permettrait d'envisager dès aujourd'hui l'inscription de ce bien au titre des critères 7 et 10. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Je donne la parole au Sénégal, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Après avoir écouté à nouveau la représentante de l'ICOMOS, j'ai le sentiment que le problème ne se pose pas au niveau de l'existence d'une valeur universelle exceptionnelle, mais simplement que l'ICOMOS voudrait s'assurer qu'elle a une vision globale de toutes les valeurs culturelles. Je pense que c'est une préoccupation qui peut être intéressante et crédible, mais comme nous le savons tous, dans le domaine des inventaires et de la recherche, on ne peut pas tout savoir d'un même coup. Et même si on vous donnait 10 ans, vous n'aurez jamais pu tout savoir, parce qu'on ne peut pas tout savoir a priori. Je pense que ce qui est important aujourd'hui, c'est de savoir et d'accepter qu'il y a une extension crédible des valeurs culturelles de l'autre côté, et que cette frontière politique n'a aucun sens en termes de continuum culturel et géologique. De ce point de vue-là, je pense que les valeurs culturelles et naturelles devraient être acceptées conjointement, quitte maintenant à, comme vous le dites, continuer à travailler avec l'État parti pour consolider, fortifier la valeur culturelle du bien. Merci.
On Estonie, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Estonia fully recognizes the value of the Sehla Batebe, and we support the position expressed by the State Party of France. We need to know what we inscribe as if we are a regional body. Thank you.
Rapporteur, s'il vous plaît.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je voudrais vous présenter une décision qui a été amendée par le Mali. Et on aura pas mal de choses à faire, mais je pense que la décision est bien proposée, qu'elle reflète de vos discussions. On pourrait passer, bon, déjà le début de la décision, c'est le changement qui a été proposé de Mali, de ne pas de changer le début, donc de approuver l'extension du bien. Ensuite, il y a numéro 2, il y a numéro 3, où il faut adopter, bien sûr, la déclaration de valeur universelle exceptionnelle. C'est une partie, au cas où vous êtes pour l'extension, c'est une partie qu'on va présenter à la fin parce qu'il faut la rédiger avec le centre, etc. Il faut continuer à travailler là-dessus. Numéro 4, je vais vous lire lentement la proposition du Mali. Demande à l'État partie de conduire d'autres recherches sur l'art rupestre sur la base des résultats du projet ARAL, analyse de l'art rupestre de Lesotho, dans le parc national de Selapatébé et ses environs afin de compléter l'inventaire existant. Donc c'était ce qu'on a des préoccupations là-dessus. Le petit B, l'ancien petit B a biffé, le nouveau petit B. Donc, d'étudier la collaboration culturelle potentielle des éléments du paysage, tels que les mares rocheuses de Selapatébé dans le cadre des recherches en cours. Ensuite, la proposition de biffer le petit d. Ensuite, le E, aussi de biffer. On a, au lieu de ancien F, petit f, on a le petit c. De collaborer avec l'État partie de l'Afrique du Sud, mettre à jour, il faut mettre ici, pour mettre à jour le plan de gestion existant du patrimoine culturel afin d'y inclure un plan de préparation aux risques et de réponse aux catastrophes. Ensuite, il faut, bon, la proposition de Mali, c'est de biffer le petit g. Et là, le petit d, c'est en fait ce que la Suisse a demandé dans la discussion. Je pense que la Suisse pourrait peut-être nous aider de améliorer, ou si vous êtes satisfait, enrichir plus avant les compétences du personnel de la base de gestion de Selapatébé, du département de la culture, à la documentation et à la conservation de l'art rupestre, doter le parc national de Selapatébé d'un personnel aux qualifications considérablement améliorées. Bon, je pense que ça concerne ce qu'on a discuté, que c'est bien rédigé, mais c'est à vous de décider, bien sûr. Et le petit E, qui était l'ancien petit I, qu'on n'a pas changé. Ensuite, on a il faut biffer le paragraphe 2. On va plus avant. On avance. Je ne vois pas sur l'écran si vous êtes là où je suis. S'il vous plaît. Vous allez... Oui, 4. Mais il faut d'abord montrer ce qui a été biffé. Hein. Vous ne me suivez pas, le secrétariat. Je vous prie de me suivre. Hein. Prends note, voilà, c'est ça, Monet. Merci. On a 2. Le 2. S'il vous plaît, c'est le paragraphe, mais vous devez voir. Hein. Le paragraphe à biffer, prends note. Le paragraphe 3, qui était proposé à être supprimé, numéro 3. Et on va au 4. Voilà. Mali. C'est la proposition du Mali. Je vais vous lire. Bon, arrêtez-vous. OK. Ben. recommande que l'État partie prenne en considération les points suivants. Petit a, soumettre une demande d'assistance internationale pour renforcer la gestion du patrimoine. Bien, on va au petit b. Garantir que la tradition orale soit incluse dans les priorités de recherche du parc transfrontalier Maloti-Drakensberg afin de valoriser l'interprétation de l'art rupestre sain. Bon, ensuite, on n'a pas de changement sur, au niveau de C, petit c, petit d, petit e. Donc, on a gardé ces paragraphes de la décision proposée. On est au 5. OK. On s'arrête là, merci. Donc, ici, dans ce paragraphe, il n'y a qu'un petit changement. Donc, si vous voulez, je peux vous lire tout le paragraphe, mais je pense qu'il n'y a pas que c'est pas nécessaire. Donc, c'est juste pour biffer le mot au quatrième ligne potentiel. Bon. On continue, merci. Numéro 6. Demande aussi aux États parties. Et là, le petit a et petit b, on n'avait pas de changement. On passe au petit c, que je vais vous lire doucement. Officialiser les zones tampons qui entourent le bien et de poursuivre leur tentative de coopération en vue de fournir une zone tampon au sud de Selabatebe, située sur le territoire de l'Afrique du Sud. Bon, on a le petit d qui est proposé pour la suppression. On a le numéro 7. Félicite, bon, le même comme il était auparavant, mais d'après ce qu'on a entendu de la part de l'ICOMOS, on pourrait peut-être à la fin du numéro 7 proposer, bon, je ne sais pas ce que vous pensez là-dessus, proposer de continuer à travailler donc à la fin et continuer à travailler avec les organes consultatifs pour améliorer le plan de gestion ou pour bon, on va écouter les États parties tout à l'heure, ce qu'ils en pensent, parce que c'est ce qui vient d'être dit par l'ICOMOS, bon, de continuer à coopérer avec les organisations. Oh, bon, on passe au 8, s'il vous plaît. Bon, je vous lis. Demande en outre l'État partie de soumettre au Centre du patrimoine mondial d'ici le 1er février 2015. S'il vous plaît, anglais, vous ne pouvez pas, quand je lis, il faut que vous vous arrêtez. Merci. Là, merci. Pour que les demande en outre à l'État partie de soumettre au Centre du patrimoine mondial d'ici le 1er février 2015 un rapport sur l'état de conservation du bien, y compris un rapport sur les progrès accomplis dans la mise en œuvre des recommandations susmentionnées pour examen par le Comité du patrimoine mondial à sa 39e session en 2015. Donc, Monsieur le Président, vous pouvez procéder aux commentaires des États parties et à l'adoption. Merci.
Je donne la parole tout d'abord à la France.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. La France aimerait simplement demander des précisions à l'ICOMOS quant à l'application des critères et en particulier l'application du critère 1 à ce dossier au vu de son application jusqu'à présent dans l'établissement des dossiers. Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président.
Oui, Ecomos, est-ce que vous pouvez et vous aimez à répondre?
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Given the general lack of information on the rock art and the property, Ecomos was not able to confirm any of the criteria at this moment. Thank you.
I call on Germany, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We went very fast through the draft, to the new draft decision, just to make sure that we keep the former D and E of the to keep D and E of the former paragraph 2. I'm not sure whether it happened or not. And F, and of course. And another proposal is to strike out criterion 1. We should keep only criterion 3, or okay. It's just a proposal.
Doctor, you have some idea?
Please, Germany, I'm sorry, but it is not in number 2. You said in 2. So
no, it is a former paragraph 2, which starts with defer the examination. In this paragraph, we like to keep D, E, and F of this former paragraph 2. I do not know which paragraph it is now. E and F, yes.
So we keep E and F from former paragraph 2.
Yes,
Thank you.
exactly.
Please.
Thank you for putting it completely on the screen, because we were missing the amended paragraph new C old F, and with the amended version we are fine. We just thought it got completely biffed up, but it was just going too quickly, so that is all fine. So the only thing to keep would be the old E. Thank you.
Avec les commentaires, je donne la parole à la Suisse.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Nous avons un tout petit peu les mêmes soucis que l'Allemagne, que nous ne savons plus où on en est. Nous aimerions garder, par exemple, aussi le paragraphe B qui nous paraît important. Et avant qu'on finisse dans la confusion totale, j'aimerais vous demander qu'on nous donne cette décision longue qui n'est pas visible en entier sur l'écran par écrit pour que nous sachions exactement ce que nous sommes en train d'adopter. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
The floor to France.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Au vu de ce qui nous a été confirmé par l'organe consultatif, la France soutient la proposition allemande de se référer au critère 3 le critère 1 étant d'usage exceptionnel.
I give the floor to India, please. India, yes.
Thank you, Chair. The draft resolution is now slightly bigger than the extended property. And it reflects all of the angst of ICOMOS and very little of the joy and optimism of IUCN. I would really suggest that we put in what is essential, absolutely essential. We don't have to write the entire life story of all of the concerns that we have. In a sense, it's a property that is being extended. 2 states are collaborating. IUCN is extremely happy that this is being done. The rest of the concerns, could we make them more concise, less complicated, and more understandable? Thank you, Chair.
La parole à la Sénégal.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Comme l'Allemagne et la France, nous pensons qu'on peut se passer du critère numéro 1 et de conserver le 3. Merci.
Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We, as Swiss delegation, asked for a printing version. I have to ask you and to announce you. So if we print now, we cannot draft it in the same time. So if you are okay with this, then we can print it, but then we have to adjourn for the moment because we need a time to print it and to distribute it. Or you want us to go again, which I suggest, from the beginning, slowly. If you want me to read, if not, you can just read from the screen and we go 1, 2, 3, etc. And if you need to stop and to amend, maybe you can do it when we are reading it. So if you agree with this, I suggest that we do this way, not to lose any more time in printing and wasting paper.
I give the floor to ECOMOS, but I think maybe after this we can adopt paragraph by paragraph. Yes. Secretariat, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to clarify and maybe to speed up this discussion, because there is no need maybe to go in details on the discussion about criteria, because this is an extension, and the Hukalakamba Drakensberg Park, to which the Shalabatebe National Park will be eventually added, was inscribed in 2000 under criterion 1, 3, 7, and 10. So eventually, if the Shalabatebe is approved as an extension, the transboundary property as a whole will respond anyway to the same 4 criteria. So we don't need to take a lot of care about the different criteria here. Thank you.
Go paragraph by paragraph. Huh? Easier for the rapporteur. Yes.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. On va dès le début. Bon, numéro 1, c'est bon, on a déjà, c'est un paragraphe qui est petit. Numéro 2, vous ne voulez pas que je vous le lise. C'est bon, on peut avancer? J'entends la salle. Ah, il y a Sénégal, voilà.
Please,
très bien.
Sénégal, please.
Je pense qu'il a été suggéré de supprimer le critère 1.
Please, s'il vous plaît.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. À notre avis, on ne peut pas changer les critères quand il s'agit d'une extension, donc on peut se passer de cette discussion. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Et commence. Hein?
C'est bon, on continue, s'il vous plaît.
Yes, rapporteur, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. On continue. Numéro 3 à rédiger. Numéro 4, s'il vous plaît. Voilà, arrêtez-vous là. Bon, regardez bien. Donc, on a le petit A où il y avait des changements. La Suisse a demandé de maintenir le paragraphe B, petit b. Donc, si vous êtes d'accord, s'il n'y a pas de commentaires, on peut poursuivre. Donc, on garde le petit b. L'ancien petit b, en fait, proposé par Mali, il devient le petit c. Regardez bien. Le D, on était tous d'accord, je pense, de supprimer. On est sur le petit E, qui est devenu maintenant le D. L'Allemagne a demandé de le maintenir. Donc, est-ce que vous êtes d'accord? Bon, on continue, on maintient. On va au paragraphe suivant, qui devient le petit F. Non, on a un qui est à biffer. Non, ici, le E. Bon, ne vous inquiétez pas sur les petits E, B, C. On va faire ça. Regardez le texte, concentrez-vous sur le texte. On continue. Petit F, ça va? Ah, il y a Malaisie. Attendez.
Have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. D, further capacitate. Perhaps the word capacitate could be changed to facilitate.
In which one?
D is the one up.
Can I have a floor, Mr. Chair? Can I have a floor? S'il vous plaît, Malaisie, je vous prie de répéter. Je pense que vous avez dit D. Donc, mais vous nous dites le paragraphe qui commence avec, pour ne pas se fier au petit, bon, pour ne pas avoir cette confusion qui était évoquée par la Suisse tout à l'heure.
D, further facilitate. It's on the board.
Je donne la parole à la France.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Il s'agit simplement d'une question linguistique. Faciliter les compétences ne convient pas, mais plutôt faciliter la formation ou renforcer les compétences par la formation?
Renforcer, oui. Renforcer.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Bon, la France a proposé de renforcer les compétences par la formation. Si vous êtes content, on peut continuer. Est-ce qu'on peut continuer, s'il vous plaît? Allouer un budget? Vous pouvez aller plus avant? OK, maintenant, ça, c'est ce qui a été proposé avant, on garde. Et paragraphe 2 et 3, l'ancien 2 et 3, on peut biffer. Il n'y avait pas d'objection là-dessus. On va au paragraphe 4. Et là, regardez bien. Oh. Arrêtez-vous, s'il vous plaît. Bon, on continue. Vous êtes d'accord? Là, on est plus à l'aise avec les petits a, petits b, etc. Petit b. Petit c. Bon, ça, on n'avait pas eu de changement. Je pense qu'on pourrait procéder au 5, s'il vous plaît. Ici, il y avait un petit changement. Je n'ai pas vu de commentaires là-dessus. On peut passer au 6, s'il vous plaît. Petit a, petit b était comme auparavant, donc il n'y avait pas de changement. Petit c, on va s'arrêter là, s'il vous plaît. Est-ce qu'il y a des commentaires? Officialiser. Petit d.
La Suisse.
La Suisse.
Merci. Juste une question, pourquoi il y a la volonté de biffer le paragraphe D? Parce que le renforcement de la collaboration transnationale pour la gestion est un des buts cruciaux pour les biens transfrontaliers aussi. Et à notre avis, on devrait garder donc ce paragraphe pour appuyer la coopération entre les deux États parties. Merci.
On maintient. Est-ce que il y a quelqu'un dans la salle qui s'oppose au maintien de ce paragraphe, s'il vous plaît? Petit d. You can do accept changes. Merci. Le 7. Bon, là, je ne sais pas si, parce que vous avez maintenu d'autres paragraphes, je ne sais pas si c'est nécessaire d'avoir continué à travailler avec les organisations consultatives. Si vous êtes d'accord, on garde. Sinon, on peut biffer ça. C'était la proposition du secrétariat. Donc, personne ne s'oppose. On continue, s'il vous plaît. Le 8. Demande en outre. Bon, on s'attend à un rapport 1er février 2015. Vous êtes tous d'accord?
And you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think there's 3 points just to assist the rapporteur and the committee that I'd like to note if this is the shape of the decision as it currently stands. One is in terms of the statement of outstanding universal value, that there was a version of a statement of outstanding universal value in the IUCN report, which has a number of sections that would need to be added to or completely considered without any input from IUCN, the cultural criteria, authenticity, and some where IUCN makes part of the text, but cultural attributes would need to be considered as well, protection and management and integrity. So it's a square bracketed part of IUCN's report, and you could regard that as a starting point for the statement of OUV. The second is that if the extension was approved, the states parties themselves proposed a new name for the property. So you might wish to adopt the new name that was proposed by the states parties at the same time. And the third observation I would make is that in the paragraph that's on the screen at the moment, it might be helpful, as this would, if approved, become a transboundary property, to clarify either state parties or the state party of Lesotho, because you would have two states parties and it wouldn't be clear which state party the paragraph was addressed to. I think probably it's addressed to the state party of Lesotho. But you perhaps should clarify that also, just to tidy up the points of the decision. I hope those points are helpful without wishing to influence the process, but just to ensure that you have a decision that is in the best order possible. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I thank IUCN for the comments. And we explained at the beginning about a statement of outstanding universal value. So it is to be drafted and insert into the, of course, before the final adoption of the decision at the end of the session. But what worries me now is, could you please, we have a proposal to change the name, and this is very important. So I would like the committee to express itself. Malotti, the new name proposed is Malotti Drakensberg Transboundary World Heritage Site. So I can repeat, Malotti Drakensberg Transboundary World Heritage Site. If there is no comments, we can proceed to the adoption of whole decision. Switzerland.
Merci, Madame. On a quand même une question peut-être au secrétariat, si ce nouveau nom Transboundary World Heritage Site est vraiment approprié, parce que ce n'est pas une spécification de ce site-là. Il y en a beaucoup de sites qui sont des sites transfrontaliers, et il nous semble un tout petit peu bizarre de mettre ça tel quel dans le nom du site, et c'est pour cela qu'on aimerait avoir l'avis du centre, s'il vous plaît.
Secrétariat, s'il vous plaît.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. C'est tout à fait justifié, effectivement, cette intervention et la question, parce qu'effectivement, ça va de soi que les sites, une fois inscrit, il est transfrontalier et il est un site du patrimoine mondial. Donc, ça serait une répétition qui n'est pas très utile et que nous avons la tendance toujours à décourager. Et donc, mais ça reste de toute manière un choix des États partis ils sont souverains dans le choix de leur nom. En tout cas, nous préférons, quand il n'y a pas une répétition de World Heritage Site, Transboundary World Heritage Site, ça va de soi que c'est un site transfrontalier et un site du patrimoine mondial. Merci.
Monsieur le Président, il n'y avait pas de commentaire sur la proposition de... Ah bon, il y a encore encore...
South Africa, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to highlight a comment made by ICUN on the final paragraph. Finally request the state party, not parties. I think I would like to support that it reads as request the state party, not state party, the state party of Lesotho.
Monsieur le Président, vous pouvez procéder à l'adoption de la décision telle qu'amendée par le comité.
Encore, s'il vous plaît. Si vous avez la parole. Vous avez la parole?
Ouais, merci Monsieur le Président. Je suis désolé de reprendre la parole encore, mais là aussi une question. Si il s'agit d'un site qui est maintenant transfrontalier sur 2 États parties, est-ce que le rapport qui doit être soumis ne doit pas être automatiquement des 2 États parties et pas seulement pour une moitié du site transfrontalier? Merci Monsieur le Président.
Secretariat, s'il vous plaît. Le secrétariat.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, in fact, yes, this will be more appropriate. If this extension is approved, actually the site will become a mixed site and the state parties should present together jointly the report. Thank you.
On a inséré les commentaires du secrétariat. S'il vous plaît, on est obligé de prendre cette décision, paragraphe 8, comme proposé. Monsieur le Président, je pense qu'il n'y a plus de commentaires, que vous pouvez procéder à l'adoption de la décision. Merci.
Donc la décision se transite comme 8.18 révisé et adopté.
C'est le premier site du pays, le premier site du Lesotho.
Félicite les éditeurs.
So on behalf of the entire committee, I would like to congratulate Lesotho, you see, for the inscription of the site. Lesotho, you can have the floor for 2 minutes, please. Lesotho, you have the floor for 2 minutes, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, first, my delegation would like to extend an appreciation to the government of Cambodia and the people of Cambodia for the warm hospitality you have extended to us. We would also like to thank the committee and the advisory bodies for the work that they have done in considering the information on the nomination of the Sehlabatebe National Park. It's so emotional. It is with great humility and profound appreciation that we welcome this decision to extend the Ukahlamba-Drakensberg National Park of the Republic of South Africa to include the Sehlabatebe National Park, to now be called the Maluti-Drakensberg Transboundary World Heritage Site. This is historic to us, and it simply gives expression to the value of the collaborative efforts on cultural heritage that are going on between Lesotho and South Africa. We have noted what the advisory bodies have said on our dossier, and we thank them once again for the positive remarks they have made, and have noted the areas that have been identified for possible improvement in them. We recognize the work ahead of us and commit to taking ownership and effectively implementing the decision in a responsible manner. This House will note that we are continuously cooperating with the Republic of South Africa, and a joint management plan exists between us, and this collaboration and learning is not limited to our collaboration with South Africa, but we're also open to learning from all of you because of your vast experiences in the field of heritage. This is Lesotho's first site for inscription, and will therefore not claim any prior experience in the management of World Heritage properties. But we have learned a lot from South Africa, and some of you who are already ahead of us. We'll continue to look to you for continued learning. We can indicate that Lesotho already has an improved organizational structure for the required human resource capacity for Sehlaba-Thebe. There's already existing information that adequately responds to some of the issues that have been raised by the committee members. The issues raised by the committee, ACOMOS, and the IUCN will be given urgent attention, and proper interventions will be made after careful assessment of the issues. We'll strive to improve on this as per recommendations and the committee decision in order to report good progress in the near future. There are high socio-economic benefits for the Kingdom of Lesotho and the Republic of South Africa through this project and others that promote ecotourism of South Africa and development of communities in the area. This includes the production of high-quality water from the dense network of mountain catchments of Lesotho, and is thus critical for the committee to support both the people and the economy of the subcontinent. I thank you very much.
I thank the distinguished representative of Lesotho. Now I think we came to another site. Pima-Chowin Aki in Canada. Draft decision 37-8B.19. I now invite IUCN and ECOMOS to present the nomination of Pima-Chowin Aki, Canada. But before I give the floor to the Secretariat, Mr. Balsamo, you have the floor now, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just to remind that we received a factual errors letter for this nomination, which are to be found at page 3 and 9 of the English version of the document information 8B4 and 3 and 9 of the French version. Thank you.
Most, please.
Thank you, Chair. ECOMOS will make the first presentation on the cultural aspects of this site, and then I will be followed by my colleague from IUCN. So I want to start the presentation of Pima-Chowin Aki. The North American boreal shield is part of a global boreal biome that encircles the globe just south of the Arctic Circle. Although a large area, Pima-Chowin Aki is a tiny part of that overall biome system in North America. Pima-Chowin Aki lies within a landscape of forests, granite rocks, and free-flowing rivers shaped by wildfires. The property encompasses over 33,000 square kilometers of Anishinaabe ancestral lands at the headwaters of 3 rivers. It includes portions of the lands of 5 Anishinaabe First Nations, the Bloodvine River First Nation, Little Grand Rapids First Nation, Pawingassi First Nation, Pikangikum First Nation, and Poplar River First Nation. The Anishinaabe are an indigenous hunter-gathering fishing people who have made use of the landscape for over 6,000 years. In terms of categories of cultural property as set out in the World Heritage Convention, this is a site. It is also nominated as a cultural landscape. The boundaries of the nominated area are an outcome of a community-led land use planning initiative between indigenous peoples and the provincial authorities that had the aim of creating new livelihoods to help sustain Aboriginal communities. The boundaries do not encompass all Anishinaabe ancestral lands. Around some 9,000 square kilometers lie outside the boundaries, are in the buffer zone. Since 2002, the 5 First Nations have come together to develop a cooperative accord that aims to strengthen mutual support. The accord was subsequently extended to a partnership with provincial planning authorities who have developed the nomination. The name Anishinabeg means the land that gives. The nomination of Pimachuin Ake has been driven by the First Nations in order to achieve recognition of the way their living, working engagement with their all-encompassing natural and ancestral landscapes sustains the boreal shield ecosystem. As traditionally the communities move seasonally prior to permanent settlement, there are references to culturally important sites outside the nominated area. However, what has been nominated is where the Anishinaabe culture is now seen to persist most strongly. In spite of being subject to significant social disturbances, such as European colonization, being placed on reserves, and children being separated from their families by residential schooling, the Anishinaabe have retained their traditional knowledge of and respect for natural resources. In the past 50 years, they've become mainly settled, and their traditional tools of snow sleds drawn by dog teams and canoes have been adapted with modern technologies. Berries, lichen, and medicinal plants are still commonly gathered in the forests, and wild rice is cultivated on a small scale for domestic use. Next slide, please. The principal water courses form a network connecting the communities with one another. Mnemonic narratives connected with travel routes have persisted, and elders have now begun to document them and their associated traditions using cultural GIS mapping. In the spring and autumn, people used to move to seasonal camps in search of animals and other resources, and over 700 such sites have been recorded in the property through collaborative research between the Anishinaabe and archaeologists. Some of these could well date back over several centuries, but definitive dating is still awaited. Due to the transition from a semi-nomadic way of life to more permanent settlements, many of the traditional seasonal settlements are no longer in use, but they're still remembered by communities, and many have temporary uses. Until a century ago, people mainly gathered together in one place only in the summer months of each year. Today, there are 5 comparatively modern, mainly permanent settlements for the 5 First Nations. Numerous sacred and ceremonial sites are found in the area, but to preserve their cultural sensitivity, few have been recorded. Some of the sacred sites are still regularly visited and respected, as evidenced by offerings that can be seen. Within the property, several hundred pictographs have been recorded at some 39 locations. While some of the images correspond in form and materials to other pictographs in the archaic type in North America, a few of the images could have been made very late, as late as around 1800 AD. And there are still strong associations between the First Nations people and these rock art images. The Boreal Shield landscape is part of the Anishinaabe worldview, which is based on a symbiotic relationship between people and nature. This attributes animacy to objects in the natural world, giving meaning to people's existence in their environment and through the seasons. It reinforces sacredness, relates the landscape to creation stories, and puts landscapes at the heart of their cosmology. It is their respect for nature that underpins this nomination, for it is that part of the traditional practices that have been retained most strongly as the social and economic systems have undergone considerable changes. According to the supplementary information provided, the nomination has been led by the Anishinaabe, who wish to have their recognition for their role in sustaining the Boreal Shield ecosystem. From the early 19th century, the Anishinaabe used to supplement their incomes through the involvement in the fur trade, and then later through harvesting sturgeon oil. The decline in opportunities for commercial fishing and trapping over the past 50 years has greatly diminished independent incomes. During the same time, the population has greatly increased. One of the main aims of the nomination is to sustain the spiritual relationship between the 5 First Nations and their environment. And in order to achieve this, considerable changes are seen to be necessary in socio-economic terms to make the communities viable. And these changes include the development of economic forestry, new roads, and the development of tourism. Although tourism remains quite small scale, there are such as lodges such as this you see here, there is proposals to develop it much further. Next slide, please. ICOMOS requested further information in order to help clarify the specific focus of this nomination, and in particular whether it was the cultural traditions of the Anishinaabe that were being nominated, or rather the way that their respect for nature supported the conservation of the boreal biome ecosystem in relation to the application of criteria. The response from the state party was clear. What is being nominated is not the cultural traditions of the Anishinaabe per se, but rather for the way the First Nations are custodians of the natural values of the boreal biome, which in turn is being nominated under cultural criteria. In order to satisfy cultural criteria, ICOMOS suggests that what needs to be considered is how the interaction between people and their natural environment over time might be considered exceptional. However, in the supplementary information provided, ICOMOS understands that the First Nations do not wish to see their property as being exceptional, as they would prefer not to distinguish their cultural interactions with their landscape from those of other communities. It is here we have a dilemma for which ICOMOS considers that further discussions are needed. ICOMOS is aware of the indissoluble link between people and nature, which is at the heart of this culture and is sustained by persistent oral traditions and beliefs. But how can these be recognized by the World Heritage Convention? ICOMOS considers that there appears to be some lack of clarity as to how the criteria might be satisfied in relation to the notion of outstanding and exceptional, and how a property defined around the relationship between 5 First Nations and their land might be seen to have universal value within the context of similar landscapes in North America associated with the boreal biome. We reiterate that we consider further discussions are needed, perhaps through some sort of upstream process to discuss the way this property might be defined, protected, and managed with respect to cultural criteria as a way of exploring how it could justify outstanding universal value. There are many places around the world with similar issues relating to how indigenous people relate to their landscape, and ICOMOS would like to have seen this nomination as being an exemplar of how these issues could be resolved. These issues are not uniquely found in Pimatuin Aki. Indeed, they are present in 2 other nominations that are being considered by this committee. They have also been found in a considerable number of nominations that have been presented to the committee over the years. Although the World Heritage Convention is the sole international convention that relates to both culture and nature, the recognition of both aspects in one property still needs in effect 2 nominations, each of which is evaluated separately and each of which can be accepted without reference to the other. Although the criteria have been merged, their use has not. And currently, there is no way for properties to demonstrate within the current wording of the criteria either that cultural systems are necessary to sustain the OUV of the property, or that nature is imbued with cultural value in a property to a degree that is exceptional. It is for all these reasons that ICOMOS considers that for Pimatuin Ake, more discussion is needed within some sort of upstream process in order that we can consider all these issues and see how a way forward might be identified. We ideally consider that such a reflection should be carried out jointly with IUCN in order to understand a wider understanding, or to allow a wider understanding of this crucial interrelationship between culture and nature. Next slide, please. We consider integrity and authenticity have been met, but are highly vulnerable to socio-economic changes. As I have explained, we do not consider that the criteria have been met, or indeed that the comparative analysis has been satisfied. boundaries and conservation are adequate, but ICOMOS considers that the legal protection in place needs more clarity, as provincial protection covers less than a third of the nominated area. We also consider that the management system of the property could be further developed through the provision of an interprovincial framework and the completion of land use and management plans for the First Nations areas. Next slide, please. Next slide. In conclusion, ICOMOS recommends that the examination of the nomination of Pimatuan Eke to the World Heritage Site list be deferred on the basis of cultural criteria. But we do recommend that an advisory mission should be undertaken for the reasons that I have explained. My colleague from IUCN will now add his comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. And IUCN's evaluation of Pimatuan Eke is on page 135 of the English, 139 of the French versions of the IUCN evaluation report. Pimatuan Eke is centrally located in the North American boreal biome and in the boreal shield ecological region of that biome. It's characterized in terms of its natural values by boreal forests with relatively small trees, bedrock exposures of granite, long free-flowing rivers, and numerous lakes and wetlands. And as ICOMOS has noted, this is an extremely large protected area. Next slide, please. The rivers flowing across the nominated area provide ecological connectivity, nutrient transfer, and along with the numerous lakes, both dominate the landscape and are critical to the way in which this ecosystem functions, and are also so underpinning of the use by Indigenous peoples, First Nations, in terms of the cultural use of this landscape. The nominated property contains most of the mammal, bird, and amphibian species that are representative of the North American boreal shield, and this is a very large and important protected area within that ecological region. All the elements of IUCN's evaluation process were highly impressed with the exceptional nature of this nomination that was demonstrated by the interaction of First Nations with this area. But this aspect, in the view of IUCN, was related to the application of the cultural criteria as they're currently worded within the convention, and that was also the approach that was taken in the nomination as submitted. So we consider that that significance is most appropriately evaluated and advised to this committee by ICOMOS, and you've just heard the presentation from ICOMOS in that regard. Conversely, it was IUCN's contention that a situation to apply only the natural criterion would appear to present potentially an inappropriate recognition of the nomination in relation to its community-led nature, and also the central premise of this nomination that traditional use and the long-standing traditional relationship of people with nature was the intrinsic essence of the nomination. Next slide, please. So in relation to criterion 9, Pimatuan Eke represents a typical large, natural and healthy boreal shield ecosystem. The property, the nominated property, is intact with its characteristic species and processes demonstrated. There are similar protected areas nearby, but they are smaller, and there are other more diverse boreal inscriptions on the World Heritage List, but not in the North American boreal shield. The nomination does seem to be remarkable in the degree to which its protection and management has been developed in a way which is community-led and with the central engagement of the 5 First Nations in the process, whose traditional lands are included in the nomination. The boundaries of the nominated property, however, just considering natural criterion 9 as it's worded, would not be considered to be optimally defined if it was just that criteria being applied. And the view of the IUCN panel was therefore that the case for inscription under only criterion 9 was not a compelling one, despite the vast scale and the naturalness of this area. It was noted as well that some of the areas that are not included in the nominated property are places where First Nations have not to date wished to include lands in the nominated process. And so we considered that the boundaries were responding to boundaries that had been developed in relation to cultural choices within the nomination, and whilst many parts of the boundaries would be appropriate, in some areas they did not seem to be the optimal configuration in relation to the recognition of a nomination only in relation to ecological processes. The nominated area in terms of its protection and management is mainly government-owned or Crown land with some small First Nations-owned components near communities and subject to the jurisdiction of the provincial government, as are the 3 protected areas included. The 2 provinces and the 5 First Nation communities have joined together in the PRU-Ake Corporation, and it's this corporation that has both prepared the nomination and is proposed to be the management entity. Like ICOMOS, and partly considering the conclusions that ICOMOS had reached in relation to the recommendation for further discussion on the recognition of the tangible and intangible relationships of people with nature, IUCN's panel reached a conclusion to recommend deferral of this property at this session of the World Heritage Committee, due both to the difficulties in establishing a compelling case for the application of Criterion 9 on its own, due to the integrity considerations, notably with the boundary that I've mentioned, but also the consideration that the omission of the recognition of traditional peoples that would result from recommending an inscription only on Criterion 9, together with the need that we consider exists like ICOMOS to engage in further dialogue in these issues, might lead to an inappropriate recognition of this property on the World Heritage List in relation to its essential proposal in the nominated document. I'd like to just note on behalf of IUCN that the last 20 years since the World Heritage criteria were revised and the interaction between people and nature was removed from what was previously Criterion 9 have seen a growing recognition that governance of protected areas by indigenous indigenous peoples and communities, the nature of indigenous and community conserved areas, has been recognized as an entirely valid and appropriate form of protected area governance. And we would like to express our appreciation for the commitment that's been made by First Nations with this nomination. And as an organisation, we're troubled that the evaluation process and the degree to which the World Heritage criteria are evaluated separately appear to present procedural issues in relation to considering nominations where it is the central relationship of people with nature and of culture and nature, which is the key point that is put forward. And like ICOMOS, we consider that is a matter which needs both further reflection and some amendment to the process by which we consider such nominations in the future. In summary, Mr. Chair, IUCN's recommendation is that the committee defer the examination of the nomination of PRU-Ake for the reasons that I've just explained. And the draft decision as proposed is in page 19 of the English and page 20 of the French versions of Working Document 8B. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Dear colleague, I think the 2 advisory bodies, IUCN and ICOMOS, came to the same conclusion. You see that they asked for deferring the inscription. Yes. And now I like to open the floor for the state member, for the committee member. Estonia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As this is mixed property, we have a mixed statement. And natural side first, please.
Thank you. IUCN, in its evaluation, comes to a very relevant conclusion that clearly the central basis of this nomination is people interacting with the ecosystem. Moreover, this interaction is the main value of it, and this is also one of the bases for proposing it as a mixed property. But it seems that the current system of evaluating nominations of mixed sites does not always provide opportunity to come to this conclusion, as the criteria are evaluated separately.
When looking at natural and cultural criteria on their own, both advisory bodies see the potential to meet them, but something remains missing. We would like to suggest that perhaps in case of mixed properties, the conclusion should be worded by two advisory bodies jointly, as doing it separately, it may not always give quite relevant results. Also, recent debate about the extension showed that it's extremely difficult to merge two totally different draft decisions together. Thank you.
The ICOMOS evaluations are always very comprehensive and very professional, but still rather different. In this particular case, where the evaluation is based on the report made by a well-known art historian, a good specialist expert on the 19th century public parks, is by its tonality somehow tight-fisted or hard-fisted, somehow not willing to recognize all the values which obviously are there. And in this light, we wouldn't mind the mitigation of the decision. Thank you.
Call on Germany, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We first congratulate the State Party having brought forward this nomination by First Nations, which represent an important site in the boreal biome and an exemplary case for nature-culture linkages. Having read both ICOMOS and IUCN recommendation, we see that this is a new type of property, and the evaluation gives the impression that capturing the real values of this site, which are related to man living in and with an intact natural ecosystem, under the current set of criteria and the current evaluation process, is not an easy task, and my Estonian colleague has pointed that out as well. We think that further consideration is needed in general on this type of sites, and this can only partially be done in the context of the examination of the nomination in front of us. We believe that the Pimachuin-Akin presents an exceptional site, and issues which have been raised by ICOMOS and IUCN can be dealt with. We would like to ask the State Party to answer the following question. Can you explain to us the basis for the definition of the boundaries in relation to the ecological processes for which the property has been nominated for? Because as I understood from the ICOMOS and IUCN evaluation, that ICOMOS considers boundaries being fine, whilst IUCN having still questions about how the boundaries are set out in terms of being adequate for the integrity of that site. So maybe the State Party can clarify further on this important point from the evaluation. Thank you.
Before inviting the State Party to take the floor, I call on Colombia, please.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. La pregunta que quería hacer Colombia acaba de ser hecha por la distinguida delegación de Alemania, así que quisiéramos igualmente escuchar al Estado parte en ese mismo sentido. Muchas gracias.
Also, please. I invite Canada to take the floor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gordon Jones, who is the project manager for Pimachuin-Akin, will be answering the question.
Thank you, Chair. As has been noted, the boundaries of the nomination consist of planning areas, community planning areas, or Indigenous community conserved areas of 5 Anishinaabe First Nations, as well as 2 provincial parks and a conservation reserve. Now, these community planning areas conform to traditional harvesting areas that in many cases follow the natural boundaries of watersheds. the provincial parks and the conservation reserve that are part of this nominated area were in existence at the time that the project was initiated. Now, the final boundaries of the nominated area were the outcome of planning decisions made within each First Nations respective planning area and the collaboration of the Pimatuanaki partners, the First Nations, provincial governments, and experts throughout the process of nomination development. The First Nations communities, through their planning, have allocated the majority of their lands to protection. And these protected lands, together with the aforementioned Parks and Conservation Reserve, comprise the Pimatuanaki nominated area. It is an area of 3,400,000 square hectares in size. It is an area 3 times larger than the 10,000 kilometers squared minimum size generally needed to support large area boreal ecological processes. It is approximately the size of Belgium. The eastern boundaries in the Pikangikum First Nation planning area included remote lake country and cultural waterways that are the major river corridors and connected wetlands. And these areas were created through one of the land use planning processes, the White Feather Forest Land Use Strategy, called Keeping the Land in Appendix J. So this strategy identified both protected areas and lands for potential community-led sustainable forestry. But it's important to note that this broad strategy requires the protection of ecological integrity, the maintenance of natural patterns, processes, biodiversity, and abundance throughout the planning area. And it describes a goal to maintain pure, free-flowing waterways and intact watersheds. All lands that buffer the nominated area are governed by distinct legal and planning frameworks, each of which ensure that the lands are planned and managed in ways that take account of Pimatuanaki's ecological integrity. The provincial governments have developed a memorandum of understanding for transboundary protection and management of this area. We are confident that the nominated area meets integrity requirements and supports the operation of ecological processes now and into the future. The comparative analysis in the nomination showed that both within the global boreal biome and the North American boreal shield, Pimatuanaki has a high state of conservation and intactness, as well as high potential to retain these attributes into the future, especially in the context of accelerated climate change. In sum, we are certain that the boundaries of this very large area will provide for the operation of ecological processes. Thank you, Chair.
Спасибо, господин президент. У нас только один вопрос. При территории этой номинации 3,3 миллиона гектар нужна ли целесообразность расширения этой территории, которую предлагает Центр и МСОП? Мы бы хотели услышать о рациональности этого предложения. Спасибо.
Call on Mexico, please.
Gracias, señor presidente. Aquí se pone en evidencia la dificultad que tienen los procesos de evaluación de los órganos consultivos cuando se trata de bienes mixtos, como ya se ha evidenciado en el pasado con otras nominaciones de este tipo. La UICN indicó que sería inadecuado inscribir el bien solo con criterio natural, dado que esta nominación ha sido liderada por la comunidad. Queremos saber cuál es el punto de vista del Estado parte respecto a la posibilidad de inscribir el bien solo bajo un criterio natural. Gracias.
Je donne la parole à la Suisse.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Nous sommes aussi de l'idée qu'il y a ici un cas très intéressant où l'interaction entre les peuples autochtones et un écosystème boréal représente la valeur, et c'est l'interaction entre l'homme et la nature qui est en cause ici, et on a encore beaucoup de discussions à faire sur ce thème avec notre système d'évaluation des dossiers, chose qui pourrait être faite que partiellement sur ce cas précis. Par contre, il y a un autre point important qui n'est pas lié à ça, qui est lié aux limites, et surtout aux limites pour les critères naturels. On parle d'écosystème, et la question est encore ouverte. Pourquoi certaines forêts ne sont pas dans ce site qui est justement reconnu pour ses forêts boréales? Donc là, il y a encore du travail à faire au niveau des limites.
Sian, you have the floor. No. State party. State party, please. Canada.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Ed Hudson, the representative of the Poplar River First Nation, will be answering that question.
Mr. Chairman, our objective is to have Pimachiwinaki inscribed under both natural and cultural criteria. All 5 First Nations, including myself as the representative of Poplar River, considered and expressed support for inscription under Criteria 9 alone at this time, with the understanding that we continue to work towards the achievement of our objective. Mr. Chairman, inscription of Pimachiwinaki on the list at this time is important to us. It will allow us to move forward in our responsibilities while completing the work for inscription under the cultural criteria. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Oui, je donne la parole au rapporteur. Japan before, Japan tout d'abord.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I join my Swiss colleague in appreciating the interesting side of people's interaction with their ecosystem. And I want to pay attention to what ICOMOS says in her presentation. She referred to dilemma and talks about outstanding versus exceptional. If I'm not mistaken, criteria 5 requires being outstanding, and it's only criteria 3, which requires unique or at least exceptional. When we deal with the indigenous people, central government has to be very careful, and there's a high level of sensitivity required. So I just want to have a clarification from ICOMOS whether you want to have exceptionality as a key factor for establishing OUV under category criteria 5, in spite of the political sensitivity the state party is facing in doing so. Thank you.
Merci, le Japon. I call on Germany, please.
Maybe we can hear ICOMOS first, and then I'll see whether there is still need of putting something forward. Thanks.
I think ICOMOS has to reply, please.
Thank you, Chair. The words exceptional and outstanding are both used in the Convention and in the operational guidelines under defining outstanding universal value. In item 4 of the Convention, it talks about parts of the heritage because of their exceptional qualities that can be considered to be of outstanding universal value. And paragraph 49 of the operational guidelines talks about outstanding universal value means cultural or natural significance, which is so exceptional as to transcend national boundaries. So I think that overarching the criteria, this idea that for properties to have outstanding universal value, they need to be exceptional.
Germany again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm pleased that we are having this intense discussion on this important property in the committee. We were hesitating about bringing forward some proposal to refer that property and that the decision on that property, but having carefully listened to what has been expressed in the last round of discussions, we feel that the decision, how it was put forward in the draft text, is good as it stands. And I hope that with an intense communication process with both ICOMOS and IUCN, the state party will be able to put that site forward in the way that it can be inscribed in the near future. What I have suggested, and I hope the rapporteur will get that text, I have suggested 3 additional paragraphs to that decision, which capture that sort of dilemma, I would call it, the advisory bodies and then states parties are facing when it comes to mixed nominations, and the difficulty to capture sites like this one in the criteria. So there will be 3 paragraphs appearing on the screen which try to capture this manco, let's put it that way, and hope to find a way forward with it. And I hope this is a consensus. I feel that this could be a consensus in the committee that we have to go a good way forward on improving evaluation processes on mixed properties, and that I feel a certain sorry for that important site, but I think it's a wise decision to stay with the deferral now and allow for a good communication process and bringing this forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Germany. La France, vous avez la parole.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Les débats ont été très constructifs quant à l'application des critères. Nous rejoignons tout à fait les remarques qui ont été faites par le Japon sur l'application des critères. Il y a une différence entre le critère 3 et l'exceptionnalité et le critère 5. Donc nous soutenons, nous rejoignons ces remarques du Japon. Par ailleurs, nous soutenons la proposition qui vient d'être faite par l'Allemagne. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Je pense que le rapporteur est prêt. Vous avez la parole.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We will present the amendments that we received from Germany. The draft decision 37,8B19, we kept all the decision proposed by the Secretariat that you have in your documents, and you carefully studied it as we saw from your discussion. So paragraph number 1, number 2, little a, little b, paragraph number 3, and paragraph number 4 are kept as proposed by the Secretariat, and Germany and all committee members supported it. I'm going to read slowly the new paragraph 5, so we have 3 more to go, 5, 6, and 7. And you have them on your screen in French and English. Recognize, so new 5, recognize that this mixed nomination and the associated IUCN and ICOMOS evaluations have raised fundamental issues in terms of how the indissoluble bonds that exist in some places between culture and nature can be recognized on the World Heritage List. In particular, that the recognition of both the cultural and natural values of one property still needs, in effect, 2 nominations each, of which is evaluated separately, and that there is no way for properties to demonstrate within the current wording of the criteria, either that cultural systems are necessary to sustain the outstanding universal value of nature in a property, or that nature is imbued with cultural value in a property to a degree that is exceptional. It is a long paragraph. Please, you can look at it. We won't leave this paragraph because it's the longest proposed. Does anyone has any comments? We can proceed. As I can see, there is no comments. We can proceed to the 6th, please. Okay. Merci. Further recognize that maintaining entirely distinct evaluation process for mixed nominations does not allow for adequate opportunities for shared decision-taking processes between the advisory body. Processes is, okay, sorry. My English is not that, yeah, excellent. 7, requests the World Heritage Center in consultation with the advisory bodies to examine options for changes to the criteria and or advisory body evaluation processes to address the issues raised by nomination and evaluation of mixed sites, and decides to include discussion of this issue on the agenda of its 38th session. Thank you.
Please, vous avez la parole.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Nous voudrions seulement remercier l'Allemagne pour ses remarques très pertinentes et nous nous réjouissons aussi de continuer ces travaux très importants de les sites mixtes. Merci beaucoup.
So I invite the committee member to adopt the decision number 37,8B.19. So the decision is adopted. Yes. So we came to another site, cultural landscape of Hong He honey rice terraces, China. The draft decision number 37,8B.24. I now invite ECOMOS to present the nomination of the cultural landscape of Hong He honey rice terraces, China. ECOMOS, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've now lost the attention. May I present the cultural landscape of the Honghe-Hani rice terraces in China? Next slide, please. Nobody's. The property is located in the south of Yunnan province, as you can see from the map. The boundary of the property is outlined.
Continue.
The boundary of the property is in red. It encompasses 3 valleys. It's surrounded by a large buffer zone enclosing the whole of the surrounding watersheds. Next slide, please. On the south banks of the Hong River, the Hani rice terraces cascade down the towering slopes of the Ailau Mountains. Carved out of dense forest over the past 1,300 years by the Hani people, who migrated here from further to the northwest, the irrigated terraces support paddy fields overlooking narrow valleys. In some places, there are as many as 3,000 terraces flowing along contours between the valley and the lower edges of the forest. The nominated area displays the most concentrated and best developed terraces in the 3 valleys. The landscapes reflect the complex intermountain water systems that distribute water garnered in the forests throughout the terraces and an integrated farming system for the production of the primary product, red rice. Next slide, please. Underpinning these systems are long-standing traditional social and religious structures based on a duality of approach between the individual and the community. And overall, the terraces are seen as an example of a resilient land management system that optimizes social and environmental resources and demonstrates an extraordinary harmony between people and their environment. In terms of categories of cultural property, this is a site, and it's also been nominated as a cultural landscape. The mountainous terrain of southern Yunnan has an extremely high rainfall and a subtropical valley climate. The property consists of 3 blocks of terraces within 3 river basins. And the characteristics of the blocks differ because of their differing geological characteristics. In one valley, the terraces are quite gentle in slope, and in another valley, extremely steep. In responding to the difficulties and opportunities of this environment of high mountains and narrow valleys crisscrossed by ravines, the Hani people have, over the past 1,300 years, created this extraordinary complex of irrigated terraces that flow around the contours of the mountains. Next. The mountain-top forests are the sources of the water. Clefts in the rock channel the water, and the sandstone beneath the granite mountains traps it and then later releases it as springs. Next slide, please. This is the pattern that you see in all the valleys, with forests at the top, and just beneath the forest, the village settlements, and then below them, the terraces that cascade down the mountains. Next slide, please. The terraces are cut out of the black clay. There are no facing structures. Next slide, please. And this is an example of the complex system of channels that has been developed to spread water around the terraces from wells and springs. The forest still covers some 50% of the land. Next slide, please. The forests are the lifebloods of the terraces because they capture and sustain the water that is needed for irrigation. There are 4 types of forests: the ancient water recharge forests, sacred forests, consolidation forests to consolidate the terraces, and then village forests for the provision of timber for building, food, and firewood. Most of these forests have been very well maintained from generation to generation. Only the village forests have suffered as they were cut in some places in the 1950s to provide extra vegetable grounds. But now a project to replant these forests is underway. Next slide. Within the nominated property, there are 82 villages. Families in the villages have their own terraces, but they have as well an allegiance to working communally for the good of the whole system. And this duality is evident in all aspects of social and religious life. The nomination has provided for each of the 82 villages aerial photographs, and also plans to show the exact way that the villages relate to the terraces and to the overall mountain landscape. In the center of each village is an open area with a next slide, with a building in the center, and these are both used for festivities. Many of the villages have water-powered mills and water-operated tilt hammers for processing the crops. Next one, please. The traditional vernacular buildings have walls built of rammed earth, or adobe bricks, or of earth and stone, under a tall, hipped roof thatched with straw that gives the houses a distinctive mushroom shape. There are 3 stories, and the lowest is for domestic animals. Family live in the center, and the top floor is used for the storage of grain. Next one, please. In one village, the houses have been improved internally to provide much better accommodation for their residents while still respecting traditional materials and techniques, and this has now become a demonstration village in this respect. The villages are extremely prominent in the landscape, and in some, new building materials have had a considerable impact on individual buildings, particularly in houses adapted to accommodate tourists. These changes relate to the difficulty of obtaining traditional materials, as well as to the inherent constraints of traditional buildings in terms of their adaptability. To address these tensions, local government and farmers have reached a consensus on how to respect traditional forms, materials, and planning. Next slide, please. Extensive scholarly research over the past decade has brought out the history of the terraces, dating back to the Tang dynasty, the 7th to the 8th century AD, when records mention terraces being in perfect condition. A dated stone well in one of the villages suggests by the 9th to the 10th century at the latest, the Hani minority had begun to distribute water to villages and terraces by using water distribution stones. Next slide, please. The dominant crop on the terraces is red rice, and this forms the economic basis of the villages. But growing that rice is part of a complex and diverse farming and breeding system that brings in cattle, buffaloes, pigs, ducks, fish, and so on. All of these contribute to land fertility and provide sources of food for people and animals. The growing of rice is thus part of a complex socio-economic farming and breeding system that has sustained the landscape and its village communities for centuries. The essential elements of this wider farming system support the production of the cash crop, which is the organic red rice. But if the terraces are to be sustained, so too does this traditional balanced system. The challenge of the Hani terraces, as with terraces all over Asia, is how farmers can earn good enough livings to allow them to stay on the land while meeting increased social and economic expectations. Ultimately, sustaining the grand sweeps of these terraces relies on micromanagement and the commitment of farmers. The local cultural traditions are particularly strong, and celebrations of the products of the terraces and the wild food that is gathered locally from the forests are carried out during the year. There is a tourist center in one of the nominated villages. Tourist numbers have already increased over the past 5 years, from 250,000 per year to around 640,000. And within 1 year, they increased by 17%. ICOMOS considered that tourism facilities and tourism management are a great challenge for the property. These traditional villages could easily become museumified and overwhelmed by tourists, particularly if the area is inscribed. And we do consider that there is a need for an overall tourism strategy to manage access. We consider that criterion 3 and 5 are justified. We do not consider that criterion 1, which was suggested, is applicable in terms of the deliberate artistic intent being there at the time of the creation of the terraces. nor do we consider criterion 4 can really be said to reflect a specific period in human history. We consider that the boundaries and protection and conservation are totally satisfied. Our only comment on management is on the need for a sustainable tourism strategy. In conclusion, Mr. Chair, ICOMOS recommends that this cultural landscape of the Hongihani terraces be inscribed on the World Heritage List on the basis of criterion 3 and 5. We do, however, have some recommendations, and we suggest that the State Party give consideration to putting in place a sustainable ecotourism strategy, also providing an interpretation strategy that allows a clearer understanding of this extraordinarily complex and valuable farming and water management system and its distinctive socio-economic and religious systems of the Hani communities. Given the complexity of the management of this property, we also suggest submitting by February 2015 a report to the World Heritage Committee outlining these items that I've already mentioned. And finally, we would like to recommend that the State Party might give consideration to arranging an international workshop on the management of extensive terraced landscapes, so that the enormous work that has been done in putting together this nomination and putting in place sustainable management might be shared with other properties in Asia that face similar challenges. Thank you very much.
I open the floor for comment. I give the floor to Japan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We'd like to congratulate the State Party and its expert for this extensive work on the preparation of this nomination. We strongly support its inscription. Rice fields are the fundamental living landscapes in a region of the world, and now we rice terraces from the Philippines, Indonesia, and China, representative rich cultural diversity. Considering the difficulty of managing this type of living landscape, we, Japan, which have the similar landscape, would like to cooperate further for the development of sustainable management and tourism strategies. Thank you.
Je donne la parole à Sénégal.
Nous voudrions à notre tour féliciter l'État parti pour vraiment la qualité du travail qui nous a été présenté. Et comme nous sommes un très grand pays consommateur de riz, nous sommes d'autant plus intéressés par ces techniques traditionnelles qui ont traversé les siècles et qui pourraient peut-être un jour nous servir de modèle. Nous félicitons l'État parti pour la qualité de son travail.
I call on Estonia, please. Yeah, you have the floor. Je donne la parole à la délégation du Cambodge, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Ces dollars, en plus de la maîtrise en symbiose avec les éléments naturels du peuple Hani pour leur vie, depuis plus de 1300 ans. Le Cambodge félicite la Chine et soutient pleinement l'inscription de ce bien sur la liste du patrimoine mondial et appuie les recommandations du point 4. Je vous remercie.
Je donne la parole à l'Algérie.
Président, l'Algérie félicite la Chine pour la qualité de son dossier d'inscription et accueille très favorablement la proposition d'inscription du site dans la liste du patrimoine mondial. Merci.
Je donne la parole à la France. La France, vous avez la parole.
Oui.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Nous remercions également la délégation cambodgienne pour son hospitalité. La France voudrait simplement féliciter l'État partie pour la grande qualité de son dossier. Et compte tenu du fait que la France a une agriculture diverse et une culture du riz, nous félicitons tout particulièrement les autorités chinoises pour ce projet d'inscription. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Je donne la parole à la Mali, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. La délégation malienne félicite l'État partie pour la qualité du dossier et soutient son inscription.
You have the floor. Qatar.
شكرا سيدي الرئيس. تود دولة قطر أن تضم صوتها إلى صوت من هنأوا الدولة الطرف الصين على هذا الملف الجيد وشكرا سيدي الرئيس.
Donne la parole à la Suisse.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. La Suisse se joint aux voix qui félicitent la Chine pour l'excellence de son dossier et soutient pleinement l'inscription de ce site magnifique au patrimoine mondial.
La Malaisie, s'il vous plaît.
Thank you, Chair. This is an extraordinary nomination with strong culture, environment, and historical evidence of the relationship between man and nature that goes back to more than 1,000 years. For us who live in the tropics, we know how fragile the environment is, and we appreciate this nomination tremendously. The whole delegation of Malaysia joins other committee members in congratulating China on this splendid nomination. Thank you.
Give the floor to Thailand, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Thailand is one of the biggest rice exporters in the world. We really congratulate China, who can both make an efficient rice production and also make it so beautiful for tourists also. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Merci. Je donne la parole aux Émirats arabes unis, please.
شكرا سيد الرئيس. عودتنا الصين على جودة ملفاتها وجودة المواقع التي تضيفها إلى قائمة التراث العالمي. نحن بهذه المناسبة نهنئهم بهذا الإدراج الجديد ونشكر إيكومس على جهودهم المقدرة من أجل تحقيق هذه الغاية.
Give the floor to Mexico, please.
Gracias, señor presidente. También nosotros quisiéramos tomar la palabra en el mismo sentido para felicitar a China sobre esta magnífica propuesta de paisaje cultural sobre las terrazas arroceras. Y nuestro comentario adicional iría en el sentido de apoyar lo que el ICOMOS recomendó para hacer en el futuro próximo un taller que viera con mayor detalle cómo tienen que ser enfocados a este tipo de estudios. Hemos pasado recientemente en la experiencia filipina, donde las terrazas arroceras de la cordillera estuvieron en la lista en peligro, y el gran esfuerzo que hizo el Estado filipino para recuperar ese saber ancestral, y por lo tanto nos parece que China con este ejemplo enriquece de una manera extraordinaria lo que son la enorme variedad de paisajes culturales que ya figuran en la lista de Patrimonio Mundial. Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
Call on Ethiopia, please.
Thank you, Chair. Well, we join the appreciation of colleagues on the appreciation of how effectively the document have been developed. Not only with that, I think with this outstanding site for countries with agrarian economies, the way they manage this landscape with regards to land rehabilitation and management, there will be a lot we will be learning. We have inscribed another site in Ethiopia, which is a landscape site, not for rice, but very similar land management experiences we have. I think from this site there will be a lot of good practices we will be learning, and others too. So this very enlightening report of the advisory body, ICOMOS, would like to appreciate, and it clearly shows not only how much incredible this landscape is, but also the very outstanding sustainable management being rendered. And we are very confident that the State Party of China will further implement these ICOMOS recommendations. With this, we would like to congratulate the State Party of China. I thank you.
On Germany, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Germany congratulates China for the convincing nomination of the cultural landscape of Hongyi Hani rice terraces, and Germany would like to underline that we can we can support the draft decision as proposed by the Secretariat. Thank you.
I call on Serbia here.
Serbia joins the previous speakers in supporting the China nomination and congratulates China.
I call on Colombia, please.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. Nos sumamos a todas las voces de felicitación que han expresado las distintas delegaciones. Quisiéramos insistir en un punto, y es que se inscribe un nuevo paisaje cultural productivo, como puede ser el del agavero de tequila en México o el cafetero en Colombia, que implica una serie de retos muy importantes que estaríamos dispuestos a compartir con China. Felicitaciones, y estamos absolutamente de acuerdo en el proyecto de decisión para la inscripción de este sitio. Gracias.
Call on Russia, please.
Спасибо, господин президент. Российская Федерация искренне поздравляет Китай с включением удивительной уникальной номинации.
Call on India.
Thank you, Chair. It's with great pleasure that we would like to congratulate the State Party on this unique inscription, joining a growing list of such inscriptions from Colombia and the Philippines, and we hope there'll be many more. We are entirely and utterly confident that the People's Republic of China would manage this site in a way that it would become a model for other and future inscriptions. Thank you, Chair.
Japan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry for Japan to take the floor again. Since I want to give the state party the opportunity to speak before we go to the adoption, let me pose a small question. One of the challenges for the sustainable preservation of this kind of a site is the possible declining population. I wonder if there are any signs of declining population in China. I know China doesn't mind if a small region has a decline in population because it has already a huge population overall, but that matters when it comes to the preservation of cultural landscape. So maybe the state party can answer to my question. Of course, the answer does not change our position to support the inscription. Thank you.
Oui, nous avons déjà beaucoup de félicitations à l'État parti, mais il y a une question qui est tournée envers l'État parti. Donc j'invite la Chine de prendre parole, s'il vous plaît.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks to Japanese delegation to raise a very important and interesting question to Honghe Hani rice terraces cultural landscape. Yes, in China we really have the large populations, and the large scale, large size rice terraces and raised for so many people for a long time, and we have a long history for, the local people living in their villages, and they farm their wonderful terraces, and they have very important and strong and very strong tradition and culture to maintain the wonderful terraces, the rice terraces, and the local people, they love the terraces, and the local government, they establish a very effective system management for conserve and safeguard their very important terraces. The young people, they respect their tradition and culture, and they know they have to conserve. That's very important, and that's very beautiful terraces. And the local government and the central government of China, they establish, a series of management and conservation laws, regulations, and policies, and to help the local people to, to improve their living condition and to improve their lives and help them to stay there. So thank you. So I think we believe we can conserve and management this very important cultural landscape for future generations. Thank you.
I think Japan is happy with the response. So now I invite the committee member to adopt the decision 37.8b.24. So the decision is adopted. So in the name of the entire committee, I wish to congratulate the State Party China for the inscription of this beautiful site. the State Party to take the floor for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all very much for inscribing the site on the list. We really appreciate the evaluations of advisory bodies and the comments from the committee members. With the iconic beauty of the landscape, we must acknowledge that the site is a product of the particular way of farming together with the unique tradition and the religion behind. It has been practiced by local people over 1,000 years. In this site, the tangible heritage benefits from the intangible heritage. In fact, the OUV resides very much in the attitude of the local people towards the nature and the culture. By nominating the sites, we want to say we value such an attitude of being a responsible community, which is much needed in our society. We are also fully aware the challenges lying ahead, but we are confident in providing the best conservation for these sites. We have started developing sustainable eco-tourism strategies to enhance the red rice economy and to improve the living conditions of villagers so that farmers can get benefits from them. The tourism management strategy is also under preparation to protect the local lifestyle. We are delighted to hold an international conference in the near future to learn more experience from international colleagues. Honey people will take today as their honey day. Welcome to the landscape, honey, with your honey. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The honey people will take you as their honey chair. Thank you.
So I express my thanks, my deep thanks to the representative of China for his speech.
Announcements, administrative, secretariat for announcement.
Now it is 12:30 already. You see, before adjourning, I ask secretariat to make announcement, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. We have the operational guidelines group at 12:30, the budget group at 1:30. There's also a presentation on the Angkor Heritage Management Framework at 1 p.m. in room 1 and 2 on the 4th floor. Now I have very important information for all of those who want to come to Siem Reap and to Angkor, so listen carefully. It's the schedule for transportation from Phnom Penh to Siem Reap and from Siem Reap to Phnom Penh. First of all, those who are going by air, according to your information document, on the chartered flight, the departure is on Thursday, 27th June at 7:15 from the hotels Cambodiana, Phnom Penh, Le Royal, Intercontinental, Sofitel, Phnom Penh, Phuket, Sunway, Plantation, and Naga World. For all of those who are on commercial flights, you follow your own air tickets. For those who go by buses, the departure is 7:30 a.m. from the same hotels I just read out. And for all of those who stay in any other hotels, they must be at the office of the Council of Ministers. Now for the return, for those who return from Siem Reap to Phnom Penh, By air, the chartered flight is the departure from the hotel in Siem Reap, 8 a.m. on Friday, 28 June 2013, by bus, 8:30 a.m. Now, very important, any registration needs to be done on the closing ceremony and excursion desk on the first floor here in the Peace Palace, and ground floor, room A, Friendship Building. Now, you need to register if you want to go to Siem Reap, and this registration for the Siem Reap closing ceremony will be closed at 5 p.m. on Sunday, 23rd of June. So for all of those, if you want to see Angkor, I strongly recommend that you register. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Dear colleague, you see, we try to arrange the best visit to Siem Reap. So if some colleague has some problem, please inform the desk, information desk. You see, we will do our best, you see, to solve the problem for you. Thank you very much.